All the roads are windy.
Welcome to the show, Karina. It is so awesome to get to talk with you. I've been loving on your plants and your sacred spaces on Instagram. And actually, I found you on TikTok originally. So I'm super stoked to get to go deeper today. So thanks for coming here today.
Thanks for having me.
Totally. So before we begin, would you like to lead us on an invocation?
I would. And
All right.
it actually comes from my guidebook, Sacred Elements Guidebook. I have about 15 different invocations, and I found one that is about a warm spring afternoon, which is exactly what we have happening here in Portland, Oregon right now. So, okay, what I like to do is wherever I am with my book is I like to just sit for a moment and take a deep breath and close my eyes first. So we'll do that. And then slowly open my eyes, and then I like to read. And then at the end of it, I like to do the same thing, repeat. You watch the bees on a warm spring afternoon. The sun is bright as you walk outside, and you are welcome to the warmth of your skin. Flowers are in bloom and just beginning to fill the air with fragrance. Gaze around your surroundings for a moment, then be still and notice the bees. Watch their overall motion and swirling movements as they circle around. Take a step closer and pause. Watch how they gather around the flowers and brilliantly navigate their way along the edges, dips, curves, spikes, and crevices, like skilled drunken sailors. Now, move a bit closer so you can observe tiny pollen-covered legs. See how some are fully dressed with vibrant yellow leg warmers, while others are in tight yellow skinny jeans? Focus on one bee and watch as she dances around the centimeter and centimeter of each bloom. Observe those clumsy but intentional motions as she delicately harvests pollen. Listen to her wings as she bustles around petals, pistils, and stamen. Marvel as she propels her impossible bulk upward and takes flight. Allow yourself another moment to watch as she flies away. Contemplate the possibility that every movement in our world, both grand and miniature, affects our future. That each of us affects the future of every other being on Earth. Next time you taste honey, picture this moment and the energy that went into every drop.
That was beautiful. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Even just sitting here picturing it in my mind's eye, I could see it. I could recall a recent time where I was walking and there was a orange tree in bloom and it smelled amazing, and you could hear the buzz of the bees and just marveling at them and their magic from bloom to bloom. Oh,
Yeah, I grow poppies every year, and the poppies, they're only really in bloom for about a day or two, but when you go over there, you can see, especially in the afternoon when it's warm, you can see, like, at one time there were 7 different bees around one bloom, and that's where I got the imagery for this came from that moment where I just walked over there. But they were all just like these little drunken sailors, like they look so clumsy, but they're perfect. They're doing exactly like the most incredible, intricate work, but they hilarious actually if you watch them. But it was just so powerful to just see every movement and every single thing they do, how it's so intentional and so important, and that little tiny motion, and then they take off and go to another bloom and just nonstop, and they're so busy. I was like, they are so busy, and every single motion that they're doing is intentional and affecting all of us. It was just kind of this big this ripple effect, like this little tiny
Mm-hmm.
movement is just spiraling out and affecting everybody. So it was just, that's what kind of inspired that guided meditation, that guided experience. Just, I don't know, kind of got lost in the miniature world of bees for a moment and how that just so affects all of us in the universe, just those tiny motions. So.
It truly does. And, you're inspiring me of how such a beautiful reminder of how even though we might feel so small in the moment, especially in the face of huge things like a pandemic or like crazy political stuff or whatever, each of our little motions adds up.
Yes.
And it's such a reminder.
Yes, exactly.
Wow.
And that's kind of the whole idea behind creating your sacred space that I talk about, which is when we go out into the world, our every action affects other people and our planet. And so if we go out into the world and we're healthier and more mentally stable and happier, and we go out and we smile, people are more likely to smile. Or we go out and we look up at the sky and notice the birds, other people around will stop and look up at the sky and notice the birds,
They're like, what you looking at?
Yeah. So these little actions and little motions, just like the bee, like affect everything. So the whole idea behind creating the sacred space around you is that so when you're in your own home, you have this like this moment, even if it's for a couple of seconds every day, or if it's an hour, whatever the time is, you have this time to just kind of regroup and be grounded and be inspired and feel better in your own space so that you feel better going out and it ripples out. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Can you tell us about how you even came upon the idea of sacred space? Is this something you did as a kid, or is this something you learned as an adult?
No, definitely learned it as an adult. It came from, and I'm sure, this is where a lot of ideas come from, is from a need. I needed like so much. So as a parent of two young boys, they're now 17 and 14. But when we moved to Portland from Seattle, the idea was we would come and live a slightly simpler life to raise our kids. My husband was still going to Seattle at the time with his job, but I was home and I was with the boys, and they were 3 months old and 3 years old. And we were remodeling the house, and I was by myself part of the time, and I thought I was going to lose my mind. Like, I literally thought, this is what crazy feels like. Like, there's no balance here. I would see like parents of my nieces, actually, parents of little girls, and they would sit and they would color and they would do it. And I was like, what world does a child sit and color? Like, my children never sat down. They were always moving. So it kind of was the background there. So it kind of came from this need. It was born of this need to just like have my own space where I could dive in and like rest my mind. And I noticed that, first of all, we dug up the grass in our garden, and I did my husband built raised beds around the hole, which was awesome. And so I just, I filled the raised beds up and started planting. And what I realized is that the whole idea of not just getting my hands in the soil, but harvesting something from seed to like 1 year, for instance, harvesting these seeds that I planted in the ground and didn't have any idea what I was doing, really. But all these seeds, and then all like 120 heads of lettuce came up at one time. It's like, because we had a particularly warm week and everything just bolted. Everything just started sending up, a flower stalk. So all the lettuce was becoming bitter. And I was like, I have 120 heads of lettuce. What do I do? But it was born of this need. And I realized as I had my hands in the dirt and I was growing this amazing food, and my youngest, Matisse, I remember one time there was a zucchini, which that's a whole other story. When you grow zucchini, sometimes you forget about them. They get like hidden underneath the leaves and they get to be like 2 feet long. So my youngest grabbed this zucchini. He was probably 2.5, maybe 3. It was almost bigger than him. And he started just like grabbed it and looked at it and just started taking a bite out of it and just munching on this giant zucchini bat. Looked like a baseball bat. And I realized at that moment, I'm like, okay, plants, soil, gardening, all of this connects us. It all just like everything about connecting with the natural world feels better. Like it just made me feel better. So what started out in the garden, and what I then carried to the kids' school, I volunteered at their school and helped other kids grow food for their cafeteria. And I saw how kids were just so excited about the bugs in the garden and getting the worms in the soil and just getting in there, digging in there. And then the idea of them planting a seed and a couple months later harvesting something that they planted. All these kids who would have never eaten salad before were just like second and third handfuls, like just shoving it in their mouths. They were so happy. So that, like, the idea of connecting with nature kind of then moved into my house. And it moved into my house because I started having some pretty serious environmental allergies here in Portland. And I still do have them. They're not as severe, but they got so bad that I just couldn't go outside for a few months out of the year. So what I ended up doing was I started bringing nature inside. And that's how the houseplant collection kind of started. That was about 12 years ago. It got really, I mean, I had a couple of plants inside, but about 12 years ago was when I really started like just getting the houseplant bug. I was like, okay, this, and then this. And then I started propagating and growing my own and trading with friends. And so then that's how the houseplants actually came in. I realized that they are my elements that resonates with me. They are the thing that makes me like, I reach out and touch them because I love them. They make me feel better. It just, everything about them, not just aesthetically, but all the senses just, and of course, plants, they actually do make you feel better energetically because green is life. Green means you're going to survive. Like we see green if you're in a desert. I even say this in my book. If you're in a desert and you're walking along and you see something that's green, you're like, okay, I can survive now. So it's almost at this level of survival that I think is why, because I was so not thriving back then. I was so just losing my mind that this green, I just kind of clung to it. It was my survival. So then I began to kind of curate little spaces around my home that centered around plants. And then about, I guess it's been almost it's either 3 or 4 years, we decided to build this space on top of the garage. And part of it was so that I had a place to go for those 3 months out of the year when I couldn't really go outside. And so we built this space with all kinds of huge windows because plants were the focus for me for my work. I was like, I'm going to turn this into work. I'm going to share this message with as many people as I possibly can. So I built this little corner that you see a lot on my Instagram, my YouTube. I have plants all over the house, but this is kind of my own sacred space. This space has become where I have learned to care for plants, all their different needs and the pests and all the things that I experience, and too much sun, not enough sun, all those things. It's kind of been my test grounds as well. So I don't know, I feel like the whole idea around sacred space design and just natural world therapy was born here about 3 years ago, truly was born here. And it's just kind of slowly evolved organically, really, as I go along and share my experience with everyone that I can. Yeah.
Yeah. And such a beautiful story. I'm sure many parents can relate to, of like the craziness of kids running around and you're just like, and plus a remodel. That's just a lot. That's a lot. So, but it's so cool to see how that brought forward this other expression that, that need brought forward this gift. And that's so cool to see and how it's unfolded now after all these years. Yeah. With your relationship with plants, it seems, part of it's so tactile and visual. It's so sensual. You've got all these different senses. Can you tell us about, like, when you're just looking at your plants or being with them, what's your experience? Like, what are you noticing in your body or in your thoughts or in your energy?
It's funny you should ask that, actually. I did not realize that my voice changed until my aunt pointed it out like 2 years ago. She said, I just can't watch your videos. I said, oh no, why not? She goes, because you just get so sexual sounding when you're talking. And I was like, I do? And so I went back. I had no idea that I did this. I went back and started listening to my videos, and then people continued to, this was like a common theme I started hearing. And I honestly had no idea that I went into this like state. But when I have my phone in my hand, which is how I record everything, how I do the time lapses, how I do my videos, how I do my images, it's all just my iPhone. That's how it all started. And I realized that I experience the natural world through my iPhone because I feel like I'm talking to everyone. And I'm having this moment with my plant, and as far as like how I experience it, I didn't realize I experienced it the way I did until I heard myself and people started commenting on, your voice is so relaxing. I feel so good. It's so tranquil. And it's like, of course, half of my life, that's not what I sound like. Cause I am running a house. I have teenage boys, I'm Italian. I'm very like, but what was amazing is to just hear the difference in my like normal everyday voice when I'm talking to everyone. And then when I get into this moment where I'm interacting with the natural world very intentionally, that was part of me going, that's part of the idea behind like the word therapy that I put into natural world, like natural world therapy, because I began to have this like therapeutic experience when I was talking about or talking to my plants, generally talking about them and how I feel when I'm around them. So, I mean, when I realized that that May is this mental health awareness month thing, I don't know, the puzzle pieces kind of started falling into place, and I was like, this is a part of mental health awareness. This is a part of feeling healthy, is discovering what it is that makes you go, and then when you speak, your voice is shifted, it's altered, it's different. So I almost feel like sensory wise, like hearing yourself in a different way, hearing yourself relate to the world in a completely different way is almost like an indication of you finding, your sacred element, you experiencing natural world therapy. So, and again, the whole like, was it ASMR? Like someone's like, ooh, and I'm like, is that kind of like, cause then people started laughing when I said, is this like ASMR? And of course there's so many like super, super like weird ASMR things. I was like, is that bad to be associated with? And I was like, I don't care if it's bad because it's true. This is what happens. And if my voice, when I'm in these moments, is calming and beneficial to other people, hell yeah, I'm going to do it whenever, as often as I can, and share that. So
I have so much to say. I love that. I love that was reflected in your voice and that it became this experience. And something there you said about what makes you, you found what makes you say, like it relaxes your body and it's helps you come back into your senses, because we do as a society spend so much of our awareness and our attention in our mind and in our logic and in just reasoning. And I think that that's part of why things like sensuality and things like ASMR have gotten that kind of connotation, because it's not logical, it's not the mind, but it's energetic, it's our feeling, it's our sensual body. Not necessarily, it doesn't have to be sexual, it's just the feeling of ourselves. And nature lights that up, whether it's nature in your house or nature around you in the wild.
Yes, exactly. It does.
Yeah.
It lights it up. That was the other thing that I experienced in the last few years. I was telling you earlier, I started this movement, I should say, I guess movement. It's called Hands on Trees, which also kind of reflects that same feeling. And Hands on Trees was something like a hashtag I created to celebrate a milestone on my Instagram feed. And I wanted to encourage people I knew people were already doing this. I wasn't the only person in the world to do this, but I wanted to encourage people to just be like, okay, look weird to the rest of the world. Go stick your hands on the trunk of that tree and just close your eyes for a second and just have a moment. Have a moment in the middle of the busy city sidewalk with this tree that's just towering and beautiful, like growing out of the cement. Have this moment, close your eyes, be present, let it kind of reset you. Kind of let it reset your being. For me, it's like I think of resetting my clock. Like when I'm just spinning out of control, I go up to Mount Tabor, up the mountain, and I put my hands on trees, and I just change. Everything changes. It's this whole ecotherapy, forest bathing thing, which I didn't even know was a thing. I was just experiencing it, and then I read about it. It's like, oh, I'm not the only person who's having these moments, these experiences. And so for me, it's not like, again, it's not a sexual thing. It's a sensual thing. It's a beautiful thing. It literally moves the needle inside my body, inside my mind, inside my spirit, my heart. Every single part of me changes when I connect outside as well, like with trees, moss. For me, moss on trees or moss and lichen, ferns, but just like the trunk of a tree, everyone is so unique, just like us. And just to stick your hands on that tree and just have this gratitude for something so majestic and so ancient. It just, it just does that. Just thinking about it does that.
It totally does. I know. I feel it. I'm like,
You just feel a difference, In my book, I give an exercise about perspective for humans and trees. Just to gain a perspective, not just about how you're walking on the roots of the trees all the time, but how the mycelium, the network underneath that is connected. But I had this exercise that I was taught years ago about the tree canopy relating to the roots. I don't know if you've heard of this. It's just this like measurements. So just to get an idea of how far a tree's roots can expand, we did this exercise with the kids years ago in school. And it was basically you walk to the trunk of a tree and you turn around, you look up, and you then walk out to find the longest branch of that tree. And you walk out to the end of that longest branch. And there's where you start, right? So you count your steps basically from that canopy. You count your steps, right? You count 5 times as many steps that you went from the trunk to that end of the canopy and all the way out. So say it's 10 paces out to the end of, and then you do another 5. And you walk away and you look down and you're like, I'm still standing on the roots of this tree that I'm not seeing, but that feels me, And so this whole idea of perspective and how we are relating to our world, the unseen part of our world, is also a really powerful experience to have. And again, that's something we can all experience anywhere in the world, anytime. Like there are trees everywhere in the world. They can be palm trees. They can be massive oak trees. They can, whatever is in your immediate world, you can still have that experience. So I can just kind of talk about the idea of this unseen connection that we can easily experience anywhere, anytime. It's accessible to everybody. And so I encourage people to do that too.
I know, that's massive. That's amazing. Just the unseen world is always blowing my mind. I mean, the extent, I knew that the roots went out past the canopy. I didn't know it was 5 times out. That's awesome.
Some are more. Some go on for miles.
That's amazing.
Like a willow tree, eucalyptus tree, they're expansive. They just go on and on and on and on.
Wow. That's amazing. That's awesome. So I think this is a really cool time too, also here, like one thing that during this whole COVID lockdown has been helping me is I've gone out and in my whole apartment complex where I live, there's 2 trees right next to each other that are original trees from the land that they did not cut down. And they are like, I go there and I touch them and I'm like, Yes. So it's, find your trees wherever you can find them and get that, But then talking about, there's never been a better time to get to value having a sacred space in your home. And I keep going back to what you said about like, find what makes you go, can you tell us more about that in relation to finding the sacred elements of your own sacred space? Like, lead us through that.
Like the steps to discovering your sacred element.
Yeah, perhaps that. And like, how can we, people who are listening, we're going to be in this COVID kind of shelter in place. It's going to be varying degrees for quite some time. So, I feel like it's just beginning in a way. So as people are moving into this, what can they do to find that and then incorporate that into a space in their own home?
Right. Again, I agree. I feel like this is kind of the beginning of, and in a way to kind of go kind of out there and be very woo. I feel like Mother Nature was like, okay, you guys obviously can't do it on your own. You guys are failing in a huge way to make the shifts and the changes that we all need to do in order for us to survive together on this planet. So I'm going to go ahead and do it for you. And I kind of feel like Mother Nature was like, okay, you guys forget it. I'm just going to take over here. And so what's interesting with that is as we all kind of transition and get used to the idea of being inside and not interacting with each other, which is so weird, and not interacting with just our normal daily schedule is so shifted that I feel like it's important to maybe acknowledge that this might be the new normal in a lot of ways for a while, and that's actually a good thing. Not the not interacting, but that Mother Nature kind of had to take over to reclaim itself, its health back in a way, and that maybe this is a good thing so that all of us can do things like create a sacred space, like be aware that we need a sacred space to begin with, that we're all stuck at home is in so many ways kind of a reset button in a way. Like we're stuck at home. We're like, what do we do? I mean, especially people with young children or who are alone. I feel like those are two very, very, or people who, are out of work or who are not getting paid. Like there are so many things right now that, that are like unknowns. And I think that's a cause of a lot of stress. I also think parents at home who are schooling their children are under a huge amount of stress they weren't under before. And so I think there are a lot of different humans out there right now who have different needs that they had no idea they needed until now. And so what I'm getting at is that I feel like Mother Nature almost went, okay, you guys all need to connect with me in a different way. Go home, like kind of like sending the baddest kids home, like go stay in your room and figure out what you've done wrong, So I almost feel like going home and staying home. One of the things we can do to when we do all come back out into the world is create a space in our homes, or multiple spaces in our homes. I create them all over my house. I have like one in the shelf in the bathroom. I have one in my kitchen window. I have this one here. I create what I call sacred spaces everywhere because they connect me with the natural world. It can be crystals, it can be rocks, it can be a candle, it can be sage, it can be fire, water, metal, wood, any kind of element that you love or that you. And I actually really like the combination of elements together too, to kind of create like a story there. Like crystals and plants, just they go together, obviously. So creating these like moments around your house where you can just look, experience, feel, touch, taste, smell, whatever it is, to just remind you that you are this part of nature. You are this human being, and what can we do when we do go back out into the world that will be shifted, that will be different? How can we shift our everyday so that we interact with the natural world differently when we do finally go back out there? And again, I feel like this is something that was put into my life and has organically grown over the years because I really feel that it needs to ripple out. This message needs to ripple out. It's our only, not that I'm like my message is the only chance of survival, but it's one message that contributes to the chance of our societal well-being on this planet. Shifting ourselves first inside our own homes, our own bodies, and then having that affect other people and our planet is, I feel like, a really huge benefit to this pandemic, actually, in a very strange way. But I feel like this message is perfectly timed, you know, as we shelter in place and have to reassess our daily lives. You know.
Right. Exactly. It is a big moment, you know. Just want to say my heart goes out to everyone's been affected this in varying levels, and no matter what degree you've been affected to my English grammar here, I can't even say what I'm going to say. No matter to what degree you've been affected, having something in your external environment that can help you remember of that space in your internal environment can help you calibrate here as you're saying now, and then remember as we go out into the world, when we can go out again, to come from that inner place. Like I do feel too like this is a huge opportunity, as sad as it is and as many sacrifices are being made in a way. This is a huge opportunity for people to pause and take notice of their surroundings and what's around them and slow down. And some people have had to speed up. You know, not everyone's going slow, but it's a massive shift. It's kind of like a pattern, I guess what you would call a pattern interrupt, where it's like whatever you've been doing is no longer what you're doing now, and you have to reevaluate so many things about your life. You know, are you willing to share like what kind of personal contemplations or evaluations have come up in your own life in this time? Like what's been showing up for you?
Actually, what's been showing up for me is work. Just, I've never worked this many hours in my life, and it's not the kind of work like I'm making money work. It's work like I need to get this message out to as many people on as many platforms as possible right now, because I feel like this is my purpose in life. I mean, besides raising a beautiful family that I'm very grateful for, I feel like this part of my life, my purpose is to get this message out so that more people can feel better and that our planet feels better. So I've literally pulled like 12-hour days for the last month, actually 2 months, just almost every day. I never take a day off, which is not healthy either. But I just feel
But you take moments off in your sacred space, I assume.
No, I do. I absolutely do. I stop and I just kind of regroup, and I just feel so like my personal journey through this has basically just been like, I can't stop myself from continuing to work because I feel so motivated, and I feel like I have so much momentum around me, and that my message, like I can't want to keep saying my, because it's not me. I feel like I'm kind of being a vessel through, like a vessel for nature, really. But this message is resonating with so many people that I don't feel like I can stop. So that's what's coming up for me, is this inability to slow down right now so that I can get this out as much as possible, because I feel like it really does impact people's everyday lives. And my whole goal is this ripple effect to impact everyone's lives so they feel better, so that we can all feel better, so that our planet feels better, so that we can live a different existence when we do finally get back out there and start living differently, that it's all shifted. And in the meantime, for me, it's just been diving into work. My kids are now, like I said, they're older, so we've kind of moved into this almost like roommate situation because they're not really going to school. They're kind of going to school. My 8th grader is barely going to school. My junior in high school, he's going to school a little more because he has classes that are like college prep type classes. But my partner, he's working kind of 2 jobs because his work was affected by this. And so we personally have moved into a very different kind of existence. And it has allowed me to basically get up. I get up in the morning, not to get the kids out the door to a school bell, for their routine, but I wake up in the morning with the lights. It's usually between 5 and 6 a.m. I'm awake. I work literally like a 12-hour day. I will go downstairs, get some food. Every couple days, I'll go for a walk. And then I had literally just pour myself into work. And then I go to bed with the dark and I wake back up with light. So I feel like I'm very in tune with the patterns of nature right now, because I feel very much like, again, like kind of like a vessel that needs to just get this message out. So I'm very grateful for the timing of this podcast, because I feel like it's going to reach even more people. So
totally. I mean, our purposes are totally aligned, and just seeing your time-lapse plant videos, that's how I found you on TikTok. Actually, I was looking around, it was last year sometime, and I was looking around on TikTok and just seeing, do I want to be on TikTok? And ultimately it's just too much work for me right now, so I'm not. But I was like, dang, this lady's got something going on. So I found you on Instagram, and just like the plants just like speak, and the light speaks, and the air speaks, and the movement, and the way you share that is so cool. It opens up a whole new awareness of the living, breathing life around us that is plants, and that is the sun, and that is the air, and is the water. And I think that's so amazing, just how you've represented that. How and also, just a side note, I want to ask you a question, but a side note, I've also been working a ton. Like, this time has been and it's in flow. It's like, oh, this is just what's happening right now. And it sounds like you've been able to get into flow with the light and the dark, and just with the message and the vessel. And that happens, you there's just like, go.
I mean, like a year ago, I literally just, maybe even 2 years ago, I literally was up on Mount Tabor, and I just stopped and I put my hands on trees and looked up at the giant tree that is like my tree up there that I love so much. And I just said, just do what you need to do through me. What can I do? How can I help? How can I be a voice? One of the ways, is funny enough, was TikTok. It was in August. I will never forget it. We were outside eating dinner, and my youngest at the time had his best friend over, and she's like, you need to get on TikTok. And so again, the idea behind my work is and it was probably even that day that I had said that. And then she said, get on TikTok. And I had heard TikTok 3 times that week. I'd heard the words TikTok. I was like, okay, this TikTok thing. Okay, obviously I need to pay attention, because when things come in 3, it's my number. I know it's a lot of people's number. It's sacred geometry. And anyway, I heard TikTok for the 3rd time. I was like, okay, what is this thing? So I got on last summer, and have been really surprised to hear back from people who are like, well, this is completely different than the TikTok that we have experienced. And actually, I had like the talent company come and hire me to do some videos for that, so I could get more of this type of content on TikTok. And that's just even more validation that when I asked to be like a vessel, when I asked the universe, when I asked nature, I'm like, how can I help? It just provided. And I'm like, okay, so whenever I have a moment of feeling down, or like I'm not doing the right thing, or what the hell am I even doing anyway? Like, I'll be rewarded with things like I'll get a call or a DM, or, someone will walk by in the neighborhood and say, I love what you're doing, just this validation. So I keep on this track. So yeah, the time lapses have been something that, I don't know. Once again, I feel like the plants kind of work through me, and I just kind of am at their call, like they want to be seen. They want to be heard. So I kind of feel like I'm their voice in a way. And I think the most impactful way to show that is through the time lapses, when something is unfurling, when new life is being given. Like, generally the Monstera, of course, are the most, visually, I feel like like the birth of a Monstera is just so, yeah. And then like the Marantas and the Calathea with their and Oxalis, like all of these plants that open and close with the light, with the stimulus, is just visually very, very impactful. I'm very grateful that I'm able to do the time lapses. I just do them on my iPhone. Set up a little scene. And I think setting up the scene is part of it too. And that comes from my background of being a floral design I was a floral designer for years and years. So I think that I see plants and floral differently. So I feel like I can set up a visual that people really go like, oh, wow, what's that? So I think that's kind of part of it too. I've been lucky enough that people really do love to see it. And then the thing about TikTok, I was so happy to get on that platform because mainly it was teenagers. It was people who never would have seen my work otherwise. So yeah, I'm grateful for things like this. I try to listen and try to really get out this message and have people see this that would not have generally seen it elsewhere. So
I love so much of what you just said. And I think one big key thing, which I'm always telling people, I'm like, you got to ask. And you went up to your mountain and to your tree friend, and you were like, and to the spirits and whatever you connect with, whatever that is. And you were like, you make me your vessel. Like that's a really key part. I think people are sometimes sitting around wondering like, why isn't anything happening? And I'm like, you got to ask, you got to invite, that sets in motion the response of these forces of the universe that are creating through us. You have to ask.
Yes. It's so true. It's so true. And I had never asked before, but I just and I just got to this point, like I said, a few years ago, I was just up on the mountain going, because I was lacking direction. Like I was putting up pictures on Instagram and I had this nice community around the world, but I was like, well, what am I doing with this? What can I do? How can I make an impact? How can I make a difference? Not for me, but for my children and the generations after them and for our earth, because I just hurt so much whenever all the plastics and the microplastics and the pollution, like all of those things just kind of hurt my soul so much. But I was growing this platform of people and audience. I'm like, what can I do? Like, just show me what I can do with this. How can I affect change to positively impact our earth and us at the same time? So yeah, definitely. I feel like the world has been answering and I hope it continues to, very much so. And continue listening. So
seems like it is. That's how I felt. I was like, I should invite her. And I was like, okay, now hearing this on our conversation, I'm like, yeah, that's all the like nature speaking. It's like, hey, yeah, let's weave this web.
Yes. And we do find each other.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
If we're ready to hear it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Tell us about what inspired your Sacred Elements guidebook and what's in it. Tell us about that.
Let's see. So the guidebook, I don't necessarily know what inspired it more than just I really wanted my work to be somewhere besides a screen. I guess that's probably like at the root of it. That was the biggest thing. I really wanted people to be able to hold something small and like something that they could beat up, something that wasn't precious and perfect and like a coffee table book. Like people for a long time, people are like, oh, we love your images. You should make a coffee table book. I'm like, yeah, but it's just why? Like, okay, that's pretty, but someone will open it and close it and they're done. Like I wanted something that was like, take this with me, bring this, throw this in my backpack, put it in my back pocket. I actually made my partner measure his jean pocket in the back, and we measured the book. I'm like, can this fit in your back pocket? Because if it can, then that's the size I want. So I wanted it to be flexible. I wanted it to be the kind of thing that was like ripped up and used, and so that's why the guidebook is kind of what I came up with. And so I think a lot of people, especially like on my Instagram feed, were like, oh, well, it's about plants, right? Like house plants. I'm like, kind of. There's a part in there about houseplants, but it's so much more. It's about how to build your sacred space, kind of from like my experience, like different tips, like steps to building your sacred space. It's using guided experiences to connect with nature. And the guided experiences I have in here are they're from different seasons and different places on the earth. Some of them are in my mind, or some of them came from experiences like the bees. Some of them came from actual experiences, and some of them are just things that I have dreamt about or would love to experience. So there's one in here about being in the forest, being surrounded by the right after a rainfall, and you're touching the moss, you're touching that cushion of vibrant green cushion, you know. And then I think the other thing that inspired this book was I started a hashtag on Instagram about 3 or 4 years ago, and it was a ridiculously long hashtag because I was like, I don't want anyone to have this hashtag except for sacred elements, so that people understand that it's related, and it's finding beauty around me today. And the reason I made it so long is so that when people posted there, I would go see it and I knew that they were like talking to me. This was like a message, like they found the beauty and wanted to show me. So it's a hashtag that I go back to often and just go see who's posting there. And there's thousands of posts there now. I love it so much. So actually, and maybe I should read this part. This is out of the book. It's this moment of finding beauty, and I feel like this kind of maybe says a lot of the reason why I wrote this book. So, finding beauty. Concrete is everywhere. Sidewalks, roadways, and parking lots are blacktop deserts. Where do we find the beauty? We discover the weeds, the moss, the lichen, how a dandelion emerging impossibly from the tiniest crack in the hard landscape finds a way to flourish. It sprouts lush green leaves, unfolds a vibrant yellow bloom, and produces a tiny umbrella of seeds. The wind then carries these seeds to another crack in our concrete jungle. Gently touch the moss that covers sidewalk strips and guardrails. Celebrate the mosaic of lichen that delicately decorates a telephone pole and highway bridges. These momentary glimpses are nature's achievements, despite efforts to bury, poison, or ignore them. Finding beauty can be a ritual and a habit, thankfully, a healthy one for your mind, spirit, and body. Soon, it becomes a craving, and everywhere you look, you'll see more. It feeds you. It's the nature diet. I promise it will nourish your soul. It's imperative to the well-being and health of our society, so let's embrace it together. So this part of my book is like, that was kind of the inspiration. I want to give someone a tactile thing that they don't have to take their screen out, whatever screen they have. They can just grab something and take it with them. Or I envision people waiting at the bus stop, just instead of grabbing their screen on their phone, grabbing this and just opening it randomly, which is the whole idea behind this book. There's no like real beginning or end or middle. You don't have to read it start to finish. You can open it wherever. Just opening it randomly and just reading something and have that be almost like a prompt for your next few thoughts or your next half an hour. To have it lead you into different meditations and different thought processes and just to have it I have this whole vision of a person who buys my book, takes it with them in their purse or their backpack or in their back pocket. They're waiting at the bus station, and they get on the bus and they've read it and they read it a different part and when they're sitting on the bus. And then I envision them putting the book down and looking out the window and noticing leaves on trees that they've never noticed before. Just noticing things. Just once you see it, you begin to see more. And it's this whole, and then when people see you notice things, then they notice those things. So yeah, I feel like that was kind of the whole idea behind putting this book out into the world. And one thought I have is I would like to do some more, the guided experiences or things that people really, really love about this book and the sacred space design. And so I think what I'm going to do next is put together like a little book about just guided experiences with my visuals, my images, and my words. So, yeah.
That's beautiful. And talk about the ripple effect. I love that. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And getting people off screens. And you could totally, just saying, because I love audio stuff, you could totally create MP3s pretty easily to just go along with it that people could download when they get the book.
I would love to do that. In fact, I recorded the audio version of my book.
Oh, cool.
except for it didn't work.
Ah,
There was a buzzing behind the whole thing once. It was just, so I don't have like a sound studio.
yeah.
So I am going to re-record it eventually, so that people can take bits and pieces
Mm-hmm.
and download it so they can hear it.
Exactly. And that guided, like the honey bee one at the beginning, just so beautiful to just close your eyes and see that. And this guided vision that even though we're not necessarily in this moment, we're sitting inside our homes right now, but I felt so connected to the bees and to that tree, and just, it really does shift your noticing. It really does shift your awareness of
Yes.
what's showing up. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. That's beautiful. One question I really like to ask people, and I usually start with it, but I think I'm going to try finishing with it these next few interviews, is I like to ask, who are your ancestors? Like what are your lineages from?
Well, that's an interesting question for me. Because my father's father, we have no idea where his lineage is from. It was like a big mystery of the family. And when my father's father went to go check out with his uncles were named White, Green, and Brown, their last names, right? So I had
What?
so no one ever really knew that lineage. And when my dad's dad went to try to track it down, it went back to like a courthouse that had been burned down and all the files were gone. So I honestly don't know part of my lineage, but I will tell you what I feel the most. I have Italian and Dutch and Swedish, Danish, and English in me, but I feel the most connected to like the Mediterranean, not just Italian, but like Turkey, Greece, Italy, like that whole area. It feels like home to me. And I have always loved the aesthetic, the textures, the colors, the people, the music, the food, everything about it, the environment there. I lived in Italy for 2 years, and I was going to Turkey before the pandemic. I had to cancel my trip, but I'm going there as well. I'm hoping to start like a seed farm in Turkey. To grow, because the soil there is incredible, and I would love to start a seed farm for our shifting climate. Have seeds that really will grow as our climate changes, and grow in a way that we can then share them. Like maybe have another one in Brazil and one here in America, and have this again, this is like the big dream someday, is have a climate scientist kind of test out the climate between these 3 regions, and have us grow and share seeds that are high protein, really wonderful seeds that maybe don't thrive how they did 10 years ago because our climate has shifted so much. So anyway, what that brings me back to is I feel like my ancestors are very much in that area of Italy, Turkey, Greece, like this. Yeah, I don't know. Something just calls to me. I've always loved like belly dancing and just kind of the music. Like my favorite band of all time is Devotchka, and they're just very kind of like gypsy, indie gypsy kind of vibe, and that just feels right. It feels right. Kind of that, not gypsy like I have to move around and all the time, but this just kind of that vibe is
that Romanian.
Romania. Yeah, exactly. That feels at home to me. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you. And another question, that's wild. I love asking that question because so many things come up that you would never know. That's wild. And another question I like to ask people is, how do you experience your intuition? What is that like to you when it comes through?
My intuition, it comes through my gut. It always comes through right here. And when I know something is right, I get, the whole idea like fluttery. When I know something is right, everything just feels like I do that. When I experience my intuition, I generally I exhale, and I go, oh, I need to pay attention to that, because my body just reacted in such a huge way. And quite often I feel like our intuition is something, at least in my past, like when I was in my teens and 20s, my intuition was something I ignored a lot because I discounted it as being real. It's like, oh, it's just whatever. It's not convenient, or or it's going to hurt somebody if I do this, or But the longer I live, I'm 45 now, and I'm like, everything I do comes from my intuition. I just have learned how to not be so, I don't want to say spontaneous, but I'm more careful about how I act on my intuition, so as not to hurt other people or alienate other people from what it is I'm trying to accomplish. So more of a thoughtful way. I feel like my intuition has become more thoughtful in the last few years.
It's more considerate. It's like, yes. Mm-hmm.
Like, hey, I was wondering if you should, just listen to me, please, and instead of just jumping on it and doing whatever the hell I wanted, I'm more thoughtful. And I've realized that when I do listen to my intuition, the truth of it is very apparent.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
What comes out, it's so apparent in the results of when I act on my intuition. Like, oh, it's because I was listening to my truth. I was listening to this voice inside of me. So I feel like if you really trust that voice, and actually I feel also that the start of that came from being a mom. My instincts would tell me whether or not my kids were actually ill. If they were really truly sick. Like we almost lost our youngest when he was very young, and due to an illness. And if had I not listened to that gut, that intuition in me, and everyone else was saying, "Oh, he would have probably died." So I listened to that gut, and I started going, "Okay, I need to listen to that more often. Like, that's a real thing." And so I began to give that a lot more credit. And like I said, just over the last, being more of like in my 30s and 40s, really in my 40s, I just kind of started figuring out how to use the voice inside of me in a way that is beneficial to everyone and not just me. And I almost feel like that voice is now just always about other people, and I benefit along the way, which is fantastic. It works for everybody. Because I thrive when I help people. Like, that's what I want to do more than anything in the world. So it works. It's a win-win.
Yeah, totally. I love that. It's totally a win-win. And wow, what a tangible consequence of saving a life, from your gut feeling. That's amazing. That's amazing. Wow. And we've talked a lot about this in various different ways in this conversation already, because due to your connection with plants and the elements. But is there a way that in your body or in your field, like how you experience the earth speaking? I mean, we've already touched on it so much. So if there's any other element you want to add to that, any other, yeah.
How I experience the earth speaking. I am such a visual person, and I experience it through things like right now I'm looking out my window and I'm just watching how the limbs on the giant tree across the street are moving in the wind. And I think I experience it, the earth speaking, just visually taking in moments like that and not discrediting them for being any kind of wasted time, that I'm too busy. I think all of us up until this pandemic kind of slowed us all down, again, sped some of us up, but a lot of us had to slow down. And I think that that's a really good lesson in just slowing down and experiencing the world with different senses. For me, it's visual, for sure. But allowing your senses to take in different sensory, I don't know, just the different sensory options that nature gives, that provides, just being available for that. Yeah. That's
totally.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I totally feel you. Cool. Well, thank you. Well, tell us where people can find you. Where can they find you on Insta and TikTok, and get your guidebook? And
I would say the best place is my website, because then it channels out to all the other places. So I changed the website to Sacred Elements. Instead, it used to be Sacred Elements PDX. PDX is Portland, but it's now sacredelements.world, which makes me feel very happy. So sacredelements.world, and from there's a connect, and you can connect to Instagram, which is where I am probably the most active. I'm there every day, multiple times a day. TikTok, I'm there every day, like at least once. Pinterest has actually become a very huge resource. I have a friend who helps me run the Pinterest page because I didn't really understand how to do it. And now I think last time I checked, 6 million people a month go to my Pinterest page. So that's a really fun new thing I started about a little over a year ago. And TikTok, like I said, is really fun. Pinterest, I'm never on Facebook. It just doesn't resonate with me. It's just never been something I've loved. Where else? Oh, and YouTube. I started a YouTube channel. I mean, I started it a long time ago, but I didn't really do anything about it until this last 6 months. And now I'm putting videos up. I try to get at least one video up a month, if not two. And they're generally tutorial videos with houseplants. But there's other things up there too. So yeah, there's lots of ways to connect with me. And I spend about an hour a day responding to people.
Wow, very cool. So you're engaged with people and cool.
Yeah. I don't always answer everyone. Like right now, I think I have 80 DMs that I haven't touched because I just don't have the time.
Yeah.
I try really hard to respond to everybody. So
that's awesome. I know that's a lot. It's a lot. It's a lot.
Mainly a lot just for like my actually physically for my
fingers
to respond to everybody. I've gotten this whole like wrist arm situation and I never
you gotta figure that one out because that's a lot of DMing going on. Yeah. Well, that's so cool. Thank you for sharing all that. And I just love connecting, and I love the beautiful power of being a vessel and just the message you're sharing. So thank you for sharing it with us today.
Thank you for being here and putting all your incredible work out into the world. I love it. Thank you.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
All the roads are windy.
Listen to over 200 free EarthSpeak podcast episodes on your favorite podcast app and visit earthspeak.love to learn about our collective community and workshops.